Reason I think Renesmee is the Antichrist, number one. The damn thing makes people fall unconditionally in love with it with only a single touch, starting with Bella. What happened to change everything was that a soft little nudge bumped my hand from inside my body. In the same moment, Edward's phone rang, shrill and demanding. Neither of us moved. It rang again and again. I tried to tune it out while I pressed my fingers to my stomach, waiting. In the mirror, my expression was no longer bewildered. It was wondering now. I barely noticed when strange silent tears started flowing down my cheeks. Silent tears. Snip. Where there was just one thing I could not live without, now there were two. There was no division. My love was not split between them now. It wasn't like that. It was more like my heart had grown. It was swollen up to twice its size in that moment. All that extra space already filled. The increase was almost dizzying, and some say that Grinch's heart grew 2 sizes that day. Anyway, I'd never really understood Rosalie's pain and resentment before. I'd never imagined myself a mother. I never wanted that. It had been a piece of cake to promise Edward that I didn't care about giving up children for him, because I truly didn't. Children, in the abstract, had never appealed to me. They seemed to be loud creatures, often dripping with some form of goo. I never had much to do with them. When I dreamed of Renee providing me with a brother, I'd always imagined an older brother, someone to take care of me, not the other way around. This child, Edward's child, was a whole different story. I wanted him like I wanted air to breathe. Not a choice, a necessity! Breaking Dawn PDF, pages 143 and 149. Now, a commentator pointed out to me that this is most likely stemming from the Mormon worldview about women and children. That if a girl thinks she doesn't want children, she'd change her mind once one came along. And this is probably true. I don't know enough about Mormonism to say for certain. I'm looking at it from the story's point of view. Once you hear the rest of the evidence combined, I'm sure it will make more sense. But the Antichrist, not Renee Thingy, as a lack for a better term, character, is supposed to be very charismatic, to the point where he or she could convince you to sell your own grandmother to a stranger. He or she exudes an aura that makes people blindly follow him or her no matter what. This Antichrist is no exception. One touch is all that's needed to mold the hearts of women and men, to brainwash them. It doesn't even have to be direct skin-to-skin contact either, because it happens, because this happens to people while it's still in the womb. It causes Bella to go into such fanatical adoration that she's angry when Edward doesn't immediately love it too. He pulled me against his chest dramatically. Don't be afraid. We'll be home in 16 hours. You'll be fine. Carlisle will be ready when we get there. We'll take care of this. You'll be fine. You'll be fine. Take care of this? What do you mean? He leaned away and looked me in the eye. We're going to get that thing out before it can hurt any part of you. Don't be scared. I won't let it hurt you. That thing? I gasped. Mini snip. I clutched the counter for support. My knees were wobbly. Edward had just called my nudger, little nudger, a thing. He said Carlisle would get it out. No, I whispered. I had gotten it wrong before. He didn't care about the baby at all. He wanted to hurt him. The beautiful picture in my head shifted abruptly, changed to something dark. My pretty baby crying, weak in my arms, or my weak arms not enough to protect him. ... What could I do? Would I be able to reason with them? What if I couldn't? Did this explain Alice's strange silence on the phone? Is that what she'd seen? Edward and Carlisle killing their pale, perfect child before he could live? No, I whispered again, my voice stronger. That could not be. I would not allow it. Breaking Dawn PDF, pages 150 and 151. So, she calls batshit baby obsessed Rosalie to protect her and her spawn. At this point, she thinks it's a boy because, well, I have no idea. She said at one point she wanted to hold a mini Edward in her arms, which is as creepy as all get out when you think about it. This one's mercifully short, but telling. She sighed. It isn't like that. I really didn't care about having a baby. I don't even want to think about it. It's not just having a baby. It's, well, this baby. Breaking Dawn, PDF, page 213. And hemophobic Bella's willing to chug blood for it. Remember back in Twilight when she nearly fainted because of the smell of one tiny drop of blood? The creature makes her want it, but she'd do it anyway because she must carry the Antichrist to term. That's devotion for you. And scene is way, way too long to quote, so I'll just let you know it's from chapters 12 and 13. On to Edward, and then Edward said, "Did you say something?" In a puzzled tone. Strange, because no one had said anything, and because Edward's hearing was as good as mine, and he should have known that. He was staring at Bella, and she was staring back. They both looked confused. "Me?" she asked after a second. "I didn't say anything." He moved onto his knees, leaning forward over her, his expression suddenly intense in a whole different way. His black eyes focused on her face. "Snip." "Say something else," he whispered. "Like what, Edward? What's going on?" His face changed again, and he did something that made my mouth fall open with a pop. I heard a gasp behind me, and I knew that Rosalie was back, and just as flabbergasted as I was. Edward, very lightly, put both of his hands against her huge round stomach. He swallowed. The baby, likes the sound of your voice. Snip again. Edward was listening hard, his head tilted towards the bulge. "What's he thinking now?" she demanded eagerly. He paused and looked up into her eyes. His eyes were filled with a similar awe, only his were more careful and grudging. "He's happy," Edward said in an incredulous voice. Her breath caught, and it was impossible not to see the fanatical gleam in her eyes, the adoration and the devotion. Big fat tears overflowed her eyes and ran silently down her face, over her smiling lips. He stared at her, his face not frightened or angry or burning or any of the other expressions he'd won since their return. He was marveling with her. Edward was staring off into space, his face blank as he listened. "What?" Bella asked, her face glowing away. "What's he thinking now?" At first he didn't answer, then, shocking all the rest of us again, 3 distinct and separate gasps. He laid his ear tenderly against her belly. "He loves you," Edward whispered, sounding dazed. "He absolutely adores you." And in that moment, I knew I was alone, all alone. Breaking Dawn PDF, pages 369 to 372. The first-person point of view here is Jacob, not Bella's. Though we get back to that in part 3. First-person flip-flopping is something I've seen in at least 50% of the Harry Potter bad fic I've ever read. Harry's point of view, Draco's point of view, Dobby's point of view, but I digress. Just like that, Edward was gone. Swallowed up like the people were in that one scene in Angel with the goddess Jasmine. Though, not literally, that was later. Please, somebody tell me they know what I'm talking about. I tried to find clips to illustrate, but YouTube failed me.